Hello, everyone. Let's subscribe to Relationship Stories before we forget. You won't want to miss what's coming up next. Today, we're sharing a traditional story from China. What would you do if the person you married didn't truly love you, but instead loved someone else far more? This is the painful reality Mei faced when she realized her husband, Li Wei, didn't love her as much as he loved his mother.
Li Wei's family lived in the countryside, and he had three younger sisters who never finished school. His eldest sister only had an elementary education. After Li Wei went to college, he became the family's hope. His parents told him that the future of their family depended entirely on him. My family was different. I grew up in the city with a loving sister who sent me money while I was in college, telling me not to skimp on myself. That's when Li Wei and I met, at a hometown gathering. He was a year ahead of me, and I quickly noticed how thin he looked, despite his tall frame. At that time, Li Wei's family barely gave him any living expenses. He survived on poverty subsidies and a part-time job at the school supermarket. Seeing how thin he was, I felt sorry for him. I would save up meal tickets and give them to him, thinking, I don't want him to go hungry. That's how we began our relationship. I'll never forget those days under the moonlight when he promised me, "You've been so good to me, May. You're the one I love the most." Hook. But after we got married, a series of events opened my eyes to the bitter truth. Li Wei didn't love me the most, nor did he love himself. He loved his mother the most. They say the foolishness you bring into a marriage is the same foolishness that will cause you to cry later, and I've come to realize that now. 6 months into our marriage, I became pregnant. Just 10 days after we found out, Li Wei told me, in a hesitant voice, that he wanted to move to Chongqing for a better job. My jaw dropped. I asked him why, and he said he wanted to give me a better life. He said the salaries here were too low and we'd never save enough to buy a house. I couldn't deny what he was saying, but I was devastated. We'd only been married for half a year, and now he wanted to leave me and our unborn child to work in a distant city. He promised he'd think of me and call often, but deep down, I already knew things were changing. While I was pregnant, I endured the long days alone. I worked alone, cooked alone, and even went to prenatal checkups alone. My in-laws lived just 25 kilometers away, yet they never visited, not even once in the early months of my pregnancy. Then, when I was 5 months pregnant, Li Wei's parents finally came to the city. I thought they'd check in on me, but the moment my mother-in-law sat down, she said something I'll never forget. "May, have you checked if the baby is a boy or a girl?" I was immediately furious. "Why would I check?" "It doesn't matter to me," I replied, but she wasn't satisfied. "If it's a girl, you might as well not keep it. We need a boy to carry on the family name," she said coldly. My heart felt like it had been plunged into ice. I told her, "It doesn't matter what I'm having, I'm keeping this baby." She shouted back, "We only want a grandson." I stormed out of the house, leaving my in-laws behind. That night, Li Wei called me, and before I could say anything, he accused me of being too harsh with his mother. "Where's your respect for my parents?" he demanded. I was stunned. Respect? I'd always respected his parents, even though I was the one doing all the work. Now he wanted me to blindly follow whatever they said, even when it was wrong. Over the years, things only got worse. Li Wei rarely came home, focusing on his work, while I took care of our child. When our son was born, my mother-in-law finally smiled, but she did nothing to help. The baby grew up under the care of my parents while Li Wei continued his career elsewhere. I felt like I was raising our family alone, and I knew I couldn't rely on him. As time passed, Li Wei bought a second house for investment, and his parents grew older. 4 years ago, his father passed away, leaving his mother alone. She suffered a stroke and was left partially paralyzed, needing constant care. Li Wei asked me to quit my job to take care of her, but I refused. I had my own career, and our son was facing his high school entrance exams. I told Li Wei that his 3 sisters should help, but he said they couldn't because, in our village, married daughters don't care for their parents. Climax. Li Wei insisted that I had to fulfill my duty as his wife and that I should take care of his mother. "You're my wife, it's your responsibility," he said. I was exhausted, juggling work, taking care of my son, and now his mother, who constantly complained and criticized me. One day, I lost my patience. When she spilled water all over the floor, I scolded her, and she responded, "This house belongs to my son. What's so special about the floor?" That night, she called Li Wei, accusing me of mistreating her, and once again, Li Wei called to blame me. I knew this marriage couldn't continue like this. I couldn't live as a slave to his family. The final straw came when Li Wei's mother demanded that we give the second house to his sister, who had fallen on hard times. "We need to help her," she said. I refused. That house was meant for our son's future. But Li Wei sided with his mother, saying, "It's just a house. We'll buy another one." That was when I decided this marriage was over. I told Li Wei to come home and take his mother back. I filed for divorce, and though he fought me in court, I won custody of our son and both houses. As it turned out, Li Wei's business had failed and he was drowning in debt. His secret mistress in Chongqing had surfaced too, and with everything falling apart, our marriage officially ended on what would have been our 15th wedding anniversary. Looking back, I realized that blind loyalty to family at the cost of your partner will only destroy your marriage. Now that I've walked away from it all, I can finally see a future full of hope.
What would you have done in May's situation? Would you have stayed or walked away earlier? Let me know in the comments below. That's the story I've shared with you today. If you enjoyed it, make sure to check out my playlist for more similar stories.